I want to focus on this with the U.S. because I just watched some videos that several countries, all of them who we put sanctions on, are stopping. They're ending the use of the U.S. dollar, and they're buying more gold. So I heard about China doing this, Russia doing this, Venezuela doing this, and I believe Iran. And then I hear talk of, I'm sure that's connected to the fact that I hear so many people say that we're on the brink of another financial meltdown because we have all of these bubbles. We have another housing bubble, we have a student loan bubble, we have a car loan bubble. So how do you see those things that I'm talking about? And MMT, like, I guess my question is, when is this financial, not when, it's hard to predict that, but what is this financial crisis or meltdown that America looks like it's inevitable for it to have? Because we also are, I'm reading, we've created all of this currency and we have all of this debt. How does MMT fit into this in terms of solutions? Right. And understanding and all of that. I know I'm not giving you like a very concise question here because it's sort of a lot to digest.
Yeah. So I want to go back to the climate change question later because we didn't finish it, but this is very important. Okay. So on the gold, Russia and Iran and other countries, it's really not a solution for those countries because you're moving away from the U.S. dollar to another form of a commodity, in this case, gold, that you don't control and you can't issue into existence. You still have to earn it, right? It's more of a political strategy. It's not really an economic solution. It's not gonna save their economies. They're on the wrong track to begin with. But on the U.S. situation, and this is another piece of the puzzle that allows us, using an MMT lens, to really sort out what causes financial crisis and what's going to push us into the next recession. And it's the distinction between personal finance and federal government finances. So and you hear this a lot during the political campaign, families sitting down at the kitchen table and trying to balance the books and, vote for me and I'll make sure that, the government is responsible, just like you hardworking Americans are responsible balancing their books. This is a huge myth and confuses a lot of people and confuses public policy tremendously. So let's sort it out in a very simple way. You have the federal government as the only issuer of the US dollar. There's no debate about it. The US dollar legally comes from the US. If anybody tries to issue US dollars, they go to prison for a long time. It's counterfeit, right? So that's clear. There's no debate about it. So in order for us to have US dollars in existence to buy and sell and lend to each other, it has to come from somewhere. And the only source is the US federal government, not states, not municipalities, the federal government. So the federal government is the issuer of the currency. The rest of us are users of that currency. And as a result, we operate under a completely different set of financial rules, meaning that for me to be able to buy a car or afford whatever I want, I need to work hard, earn that money, and then spend it. I can also borrow from a bank if a bank wants to lend me money, or borrow from a friend. But then again, now I have a debt. I have to work hard to pay it off. Same thing for businesses. You have to earn it and then spend it, or you borrow from a bank and then you have to work even harder to pay it off, right? So earn it first or borrow it first, then spend it. That's the logic. Same thing for states and municipalities and for any kind of local government agency. You have to tax the local population first in order to build the schools or fix the roads or pay for firefighters or whatever it is. Or states have to borrow by issuing debt and then promising to pay back in the future by raising more tax revenues. That's absolutely true. It's true for states, municipalities, individuals, and companies, but it's not true for the federal government, because the federal government is on the other side of the fence. It's the issuer of the currency that the rest of us use and leverage and borrow and lend to each other. So it must spend money into existence first, then tax some of it back.
Okay.
That's a very important piece of logic that a lot of people confuse. Public policy leaders, economists, and progressive activists even say, well, we have to tax the rich in order to spend on fighting climate change and fixing infrastructure. These are two separate issues. Yes, tax the rich because they're too rich, or because there's, we want to deal with issues related to inflation, or we want to discourage certain kinds of behavior, certain kind of consumption. You can tax gambling, you can tax pollution, you can tax all of those things because we want less of those things as a society. But don't tie this piece of legislation to funding the fight against climate change, or funding schools, or funding public health, because the federal government can do both.
Right.
And they're separate issues. And that's where a lot of progressive activists and climate change activists really end up kind of hurting their cause by tying it to a particular tax.
Well, let me ask you this before we go. What then, to the people watching this, how do people get involved, or how do people participate in this who aren't economists or scientists or whatever? How do they get involved and try to move the needle on this?
Well, for the average person who's not involved in politics, who's not involved in academia, the best group that can think of is Real Progressives, which is a grassroots organization. You can find them on Facebook, on Twitter. It's sort of turning into a media company, a small media company. Lots of interviews with MMT activists and MMT economists, and legal scholars and others, environmentalists, and people running for office with an MMT-informed public policy platform. You'll hear all those voices on Real Progressives. You'll get plugged into tons of resources. In terms of public policy think tanks, there's the Global Institute. Check us out on social media, on the website. There's the Levy Economics Institute at Bard College. Also, lots of my colleagues there do fantastic work. And the truth is that we're outnumbered.